When you hear the words rock star, you probably don't think about what it really takes to become a musical demigod. Nobody considers the guitar lessons, the early gigging in dingy bars, the cramped band vans, and going over the finer points of a recording contract with managers, lawyers, accountants, and label executives. Rock star conveys images of flowing booze, endless drugs, groupies, trashed hotel rooms, and other unbelievably salacious and self-destructive practices. There's a reason why rock stars are synonymous with excess in everything. More than some exaggeration or cliché, a lot of arena rock idols really lived that life, thus creating something to aspire to for the next generation of wannabe rock stars. This is rockers who partied way too hard. The Who's Keith Moon did what? The Who's Keith Moon is almost objectively one of the greatest rock drummers of all time. Rolling Stone placed him at number 2 on its list, and modern drummers said he's the 8th best ever. Yet Moon is arguably more memorable for another rock and roll achievement. He's the guy who made trashing a hotel room a quintessential part of the rock star experience. Moon celebrated his 21st birthday in 1967 during a tour stop in Flint, Michigan. By the time he hit the stage that night, he'd been drinking all day, but was just getting started. Back at the local Holiday Inn, the Who threw a birthday party. Moon started food fight, and then while running around naked from the waist down, he tripped, fell, and knocked out half of a tooth. He was so drunk that the emergency dentist wouldn't give him any anesthetic for the repair surgery. Meanwhile, the party had descended into a riot, and the Who received a damages bill in the tens of thousands. Moon also enjoyed personally ruining smaller rooms of other hotels. It was a tour habit of the drummers to use cherry bombs and other small explosives to blow up hotel bathroom toilets. In 1978, and after a few hospitalizations, Moon attempted to quit drinking. Keith Richards is nothing to snort at. Maybe the most infamous hard-partying hard rocker of all time, Keith Richards has defied modern medicine by still being alive despite his well-documented and copious drug use. Chasing the high has nearly killed the Rolling Stones guitarist a couple of times. He got heavy into heroin in the early 70s. A few years later, he claimed to have been poisoned with strychnine-laced heroin. I was totally comatose, but I was totally awake. I could listen to everyone, and they were like, "He's dead," waving their fingers and pushing me about, and I was thinking I'm not dead. Now, it's hard to pinpoint the craziest thing Keith Richards did, but it's probably the time he inhaled his father's ashes up his nose. Richards told the NME, "I snorted my father. He was cremated, and I couldn't resist grinding him up with a little bit of blow. My dad wouldn't have cared. He didn't give a shit. It went down pretty well, and I'm still alive. Somehow, someway, science should probably look into that." Ozzy Osbourne got so thirsty. Ozzy Osbourne is responsible for some of the most unbelievable rock legends of all time, but most of them happen to be true. For example, he really did take a bite out of a bat on stage during a concert, and was so drunk and annoyed during a record label meeting in 1981 that he bit the heads off of a couple of live doves. And that's just what Ozzy does at work. When he was enjoying his personal time during his 1984 concert tour with Motley Crue as his opening act, he ingested so much alcohol and drugs it prompted him to perform some especially depraved and disgusting acts. According to the Motley Crue memoir The Dirt, band members and Ozzy were hanging out at a hotel pool in Lakeland, Florida. After asking for some cocaine and not receiving any, Osbourne took a straw and reportedly snorted a line of ants. One gross act deserves another, and for Osbourne's next trick, in full view of old women and families, he urinated all over the pool deck. It gets worse. Then Osbourne got down on the ground and lapped it up. John Bonham's fatal binge. Led Zeppelin generated a huge sound out of just 4 musicians, only 3 of whom played instruments. A big part of Zepp's extremely influential heavy sound is the thundering yet precise drum work of John "Bonzo" Bonham, who charged the band along as he pounded away on stuff like Immigrant Song and Rock and Roll. Bonham was just as hard charging in some of the non-musical parts of his life, particularly the drinking part. Bonham was a heavy drinker, and not just in party or social situations. In late September 1980, Led Zeppelin convened at guitarist Jimmy Page's home in Windsor, England for rehearsals. While working, Bonham helped him to quadruple vodka shots one after another. The drummer imbibed somewhere in the area of 40 servings of alcohol and then ultimately passed out. At least that's what he did, according to a coroner's report. Bonham was so intoxicated that when his body tried to throw up all that toxic alcohol, he couldn't wake up, and he choked on his own vomit and died. Aerosmith was too high to get down. Due to their love of illicit substances, particularly heroin and cocaine, wrecking hotel rooms, and frequent band infighting, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, the brain trust behind Aerosmith, earned the nickname the Toxic Twins. The cred to back up that nickname was confirmed by no less than arguably the most drug-addled rock star of all time. Jerry Garcia says that we were the druggiest bunch of guys the Grateful Dead ever saw, Tyler told Rolling Stone in 1990. They were worried about us, so that gives you some idea of how fucked and crazy we were. Tyler claims that he and some of his bandmates were so into that one rock and roll excess that they didn't have the energy to indulge in the other. And that's something he regretted. He said, "I'm still bummed out I didn't get all the sex I could have had in the 70s. We were more interested in the finer blends of cocaine from a shipment of dates that came in on the back of some camel with the stamp of a half moon on it, and the Star of Lebanon, which by the way was laced with opium." Dave Navarro was too wild for the Playboy Mansion. For decades, the Playboy Mansion was literally party central. Playboy founder Hugh Hefner lived in the sprawling Los Angeles estate with any number of playmates, and high-profile guests came around most every night of the week to enjoy wine, women, and song. It was essentially a fancy flophouse, a comfortable place where celebrities could freely engage in whatever unrestrained debauchery they could imagine. And yet Dave Navarro, guitarist for Jane's Addiction and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, found some things that were too much for even the Playboy Mansion's unofficial anything-goes policy. In 2004, the guitarist published Don't Try This at Home, a year in the life of Dave Navarro, recounting his exploits from 1998 to 1999. Therein, Navarro wrote about a visit to the Playboy Mansion's orgy room with 3 women. While the women undressed and engaged in sexual activity, Navarro busied himself preparing and injecting a dose of heroin. With the blood that ran back into his trusty syringe, Navarro tried to write on the wall. While Navarro notes that he cleaned it off, it still got him kicked out and forever banned from the Playboy Mansion.